Offensively, they present issues, particularly up front. You know, Roquan, Eddie back there. I mean, they've got a number of matchup, issues for us that we got to be ready to handle. And offensively, you know, it's kind of the tell of who's playing a little bit. You know, who's that quarterback going to be? But we know they got a good receiver, they got a good back. We know they can function offensively, and so that's what we're getting ready for.
Dan, I know you prepare for every scenario at quarterback, but when you watched Andy versus Justin, did the offense change much? Are you preparing for an offense, or do you have to prepare for a different kind of skill?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. You know, there's certainly a little more under center with Dalton and things of that regard, whereas Fields was more in the gun, but as the game went on, they started to put him under center, move him a little bit, more boots, things like that. You know, try to get him out of the pocket and get him on the move, and so yeah, there's some things we got to prepare for, but that's all right. We'll be ready for both.
In addition to that, I mean, obviously it wasn't a great debut for Fields in their offense. How much do you have to anticipate, if he does play, that the offense will look considerably different stylistically from what they tried to do last week?
Well, I feel like if anything, they're going to try to do a little more of what they did in the second half with him. And you know, look, he had some struggles early, but I would say there were signs of life at the end of that tape when you watch him. Some of the things where now maybe it wasn't always the right read, but like he's pulling the trigger, he's not waiting in the pocket. You know, he's trying to diagnose quicker. They're getting him out on the perimeter, and so there were some things to where, okay, you know, I think they probably gathered some information on things that can help him. You know, and so those are the things we got to be ready for.
Do you have an idea who's playing, or are you just, I mean, is it a 50-50 coin flip guess right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly Phil's going to play some, but I'm sure you know, if Dalton can go, it'll be him, and if not, it'll be Foles. And I think there'll be a lot of, you know, just knowing the background of Foles, it'll be a lot more, you know, gun run type things, RPOs, which is kind of some of the things they were trying to do with Fields. You know, I think Dalton brings a little more variety just on what he's able to do. But I mean, we'll be prepared for both.
Role in there in the second half, especially when you're getting DeAndre, you know, a little bit more involved, especially in the passing game. I think he's second among running backs with 19 catches. Just how much of a mismatch can that be for you guys to get him in space against a linebacker, against single defender? Yeah, look, he's a weapon for us. You know, he really is. He's a dynamic player, and I think he's just every week he's improving. You know, and the more that he shows, the more we put on him. You know. Because look, it's one thing physically, but also mentally. There's a lot that we're asking him to do, and I thought he handled it pretty well the other day. It wasn't perfect, but certainly it was enough to help move the football down the field. So he does. Now look, Roquan's pretty dang good now. I mean, he's one of the best ones in this league, and so that's not an easy matchup for us. But we certainly like where Swift's at.
You mentioned Roquan a couple times, obviously Khalil Mack, but you know, kind of forget they have Ogletree and, you know, Quinn, a bunch of other guys there. How tough is that front seven?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's really the strength of who they are. And you know, when you allow them to pin their ears back, I still think Quinn is one of the best rushers in this league, and Mack goes without saying. But I think sometimes Quinn gets lost in the fray a little bit because of Mack, and you got Hicks in the middle who is a mismatch player. But man, I think look, we played them I think 4 times over the last 3 years when I was in New Orleans, so we have a pretty good feel I have of their personnel, and listen, that's where they can get you. That's where they can get you, you know. So certainly we don't want to sit back there and pass downs if we can keep from it on a regular basis.
Dan, the Ravens double TJ. I'm just wondering, when a player of that caliber starts to get targeted by defenses and gets known, and they start trying to take him away, what can he do to continue to be effective as other defenses start to look at him?
Well, I think that's on us as a staff. We got to be more creative in the way that we try to get him the ball. You know, we're going to have to move him a little bit more and shift him and try to hide him if we can, or at least give him some access. And then even after all that, if they're still willing to do that, you know, the second read's got to be somebody we think can win. He's got to be able to win for us.
I know you want to put the Ravens game to bed, but I had a question about just the different clock issues of the game. The end of your drive, they put time back on the clock. You had a question about when Lamar went out of bounds, they put time back on the clock. Do you reevaluate your own? I guess I'm sure you have a management guy or a clock guy. Do you reevaluate your process at all after the end of that game?
Yeah, well, I look at all of them. I have a gentleman here who writes up everything, every decision that I made, from fourth downs to time management to penalties and so. You know, and as a matter of fact, it's John Dykman, so I'm like, John, I mean, what the hell? This week you really got me, didn't you? But you know, where I'm like, wait a minute, 3 weeks ago you told me that was the right thing to do. I'm just messing around, but it's good for me to see, you know. But so I do, and I go back over that, you know, and there again, I come out of this game and I don't do anything differently, just for where the flow of the game went. That's how I felt, you know. I still think it was the right move.
Can you tell us a little bit more about John in that role? Like, why do you do that? Why do you have, you know, another set of eyes, I guess, to
Well, I just think it's good. Look, he's up in the booth, and to have him be able to go, he can hear what we're saying. He doesn't necessarily have input per se during the game, but to be able to write everything up and go through the flow of the game and then give me kind of a whole update on it, it helps me for next time. It helps me to, you know, well, maybe we should have burned a little more time to try to get to the 2-minute to where, you know, I'm not having to use the challenge flag. It goes under 2 minutes, now the challenge is automatic. Just little things like that. You don't burn a timeout. You don't. So I think it helps me. Say it again.
Quality control for your decisions, just sort of like, you know,
yeah, so I can reevaluate what I did, what I didn't do, what I can be better at. It helps, you know.
Particular thing from this week that stood out?
Not necessarily, you know. I mean, he gives you the odds on things, you know. There was one of them in there, hey, you know, we jump off sides, maybe you go for it on 4th and 5, you know. And there's an argument for that, but I just felt like we were in a field position battle, and there again, you got to go with your gut sometimes. And I felt like, hey, we can pin these guys down here, and defense is playing good, and I went with it.
Coach, when do you get that information? Immediately after the game, or maybe Monday?
Normally it's Monday night is when I get that. He does a real good job with it too. He really does.
You talked about multiple times this situation in Miami where you kind of botched the end of the first half, and it was a big learning experience for you.
Yeah.
With John's position, I mean, where did you come up with that? Was it something Sean had that you liked and you put in your coaching? Or
no, it's actually something that they've done around here. They had a young man who was here and went to New England and was really good at clock management and all the different scenarios of a game. And so I know that John had been with him for a long time and done some of that, and and so it was kind of a, you know, it just felt like the right fit, and it was something he was all for doing, and he's been really good at it.
Yeah, where the team is at record-wise and some of the injuries that you sustained on both sides of the ball for the past couple of weeks, do you find it a challenge to keep the morale up and keep people bought into the game plan?
You know, when you say injuries, just for us?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're pretty good injury-wise all in all. But look, I think, look, anytime you lose, it doesn't feel good. But I do go back to, I feel like we have the right guys on this team. I really do. I think with, you know, and I say it again, with what we showed Sunday and what this team was capable of doing, even though we didn't win, I felt like it really told a lot about who we are and what we're made up of. And I feel like even today, just watching these guys come in and looking at them in their eyes, they're ready to go. And I think they're pretty resilient, and they understand the fruits of their labor, and it showed the other day. And I think they're hungry and ready to go. I think they're going to be ready to go. And that's all you can ask for, is you just go back to work, and you just don't give in to losses. You don't go numb to it. You do whatever you have to get a little bit better and make one more play than the opponent does.
Sort of ties into that, but you had two young guys, you know, Bobby Price and Jerry Jacobs with the penalty that made some, you know, pretty crucial mistakes. So how do you balance that? You know, young guys are going to make these mistakes. You got to have them come on quick because you need them in these roles. The teaching points about, you know, how they feel the next day too, you know, to make sure they understand the severity of it. But no.
Yeah. And well, and you know, some of that comes with man, when you have good vets around, that's why a guy like Brockers is here, you know. I mean, I heard Brockers pull one of our young guys aside and was like, hey, it happened, you learn from it, and now it doesn't happen again, right? You know, yeah, that's right. That's right, it's not happening again. You know, and it was good, but it was like, hey, it was to the point. But that's the key. I think you have to learn from it. We cannot have the same mistake again. And guess what? Just because it happened to him, it can't happen to you. You know, we all have to learn from that. But also, I think there's even more of a burden on our veterans. You know, you can't have mistakes from anybody, but I think our veterans have to be that much better to make up from some of these mistakes the young guys make. Like, you're not allowed to jump off sides when you're a veteran guy. You're not allowed to have ill-timed penalties or MAs. You can't do it. You know, you got to pull more your weight possibly. And while they're continuing to get better, because there's stuff all over that tape that's pretty damn good too now. I mean, and I go back to this. What I love about Bobby Price and AJ Parker. They're pretty stone-faced in the fact that, man, they don't lose confidence. Now, they may mess something up, but they go right back at it, and they don't look like they're scared. They don't play scared, and that's how you keep getting better.
Yeah, one more guy talked about DeAndre and putting more on his plate. He hasn't started a game yet. What does he have to do to earn that privilege of starting a game?
Well, you mean just to roll out? He's out there first play. I mean, that could very easily come this week. I don't know if I'd read too much into that. I think it was more of, hey, let's see where he's at. He's still kind of coming off these injuries. We got to use him the right way. Be careful. Let Jamal start. Jamal's been here the full time. But look, I certainly think you're going to see a lot more Swift, and he could very easily be out there first play. I think he's done enough to earn that. And if that's what you're asked, for sure. I mean,
what does it matter to a player to get that? I mean, the first few plays are scripted anyway, but
yeah.
What does it mean to a player to start the game?
Well, I think some it does. I think some it does mean something, you know. But I think we try to just, when things like that come up, we just try to address them and say, look, man, this doesn't mean that you're not our starter or you're not one of our starters. I mean, you could argue that Jamal and Swift are both starters for us. I mean, you could argue we're 21 pony, you know, and we have 2 backs, Hawkinson, and 2 receivers and the line, and those are our 11, you know. And there's an argument for that, so because we use enough of that as well. But yeah, I think you just tell them, listen, you got to roll here. This is what you're doing. You're going to get plenty of touches, Swift. But I wouldn't read too much into that, really.
Looking at the morale, you mentioned your veterans' leadership, confidence from the rookies. Is it the culture that you've instilled? Where is that morale coming from? Is it something you work hard, or is it just in the locker room?
Yeah, look, I think between my coaching staff and myself, we're just trying to preach the right things every day. You go back to work. It's about being resilient. It's about learning from your errors. It's about not giving up. It's all the things, and I think that the veterans that we have here that have been retained or that we have brought in believe the way we believe. They've been winners in other programs, and they know what it takes. And I think while we're bringing them along, particularly the young guys, I think their voices are beginning to get louder. And at some point, you want to feel like they're taking this thing over. And then in time, you get it to where you want it. And now as coaches, they're handling it. The locker room, they handle it. Anybody that comes in, it's like, no, this is how we do things here. It's not okay to jog to the ball. It's not okay to, they regulate it. And that's eventually what you want. But it's okay to go all out all the time. And it's okay to celebrate after you make a play. Like, that's what you're trying to build.
John, one more. Again, the safeties felt like a rotation there. Is that a matchup thing, or is that something you
No, we just felt like we wanted to get Marlowe in there. Marlowe's done a pretty good job of communication. There's some things that popped up, but he's a veteran guy for us. He's pretty steady. We know what he is, but we just felt like it was good to get all 3 of them in there, and so we're going to try to continue to rotate.
Hey guys.
All right.